An NFL future Hall of Famer weighs in on this year's draft. A former #1 overall pick finds a new team. A civilian makes one of the stupidest moves I've ever heard in my entire life. And we wrap up the first round of our mock draft. Welcome to What Would Shula Do?
This is a Miami Sports Music Podcast Network production. Be sure to visit us at miamisportsmusic.com/podcast. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Miami Sports Music. Now sit back, relax on whatever listening device you are on, and enjoy the Miami Sports Music Show.
All right, Dog fans, let's hop into it. I've done a couple takes of this one already, which I normally don't do. I must be half asleep or something, so just ignore me if I'm slurring or stuttering or anything like that. So, first big piece of news today: Justin Fields had his second pro day. If you watched the first part of this, you'll know I talked about Mac Jones and how the 49ers initially skipped Justin Fields' pro day to go to Mac Jones. The 49ers were in attendance today. So were the Broncos, the Jets, the Panthers, and the Falcons. Here's the takeaway here. The big news I think that I see from this is Joe Thomas, who Joe Thomas, for those you don't know, former Cleveland Browns left tackle for over a decade, was one of the best left tackles in football. In my opinion, the only guy that was really better than him for a significant period of time, you could say hands down, was our guy Jake Long for those 3.5-ish years before he got the injury and ended up moving on from Miami, retiring early. My favorite part about Joe Thomas, when he was drafted number 3 overall, I believe, in the same draft we took Ted Ginn Jr. He was actually out on a fishing boat with his dad. They had a trip that the two took every year, and it just happened to fall on a weekend. It was a draft, and he was like, "Yeah, whatever, I'm getting picked. I'll be all right." Joe, he didn't complain or whine or any of that stuff that you would expect a player in Cleveland, and we shouldn't say we expected. We've witnessed players in Cleveland to do time and time again. Fortunately, he did end up retiring shortly before they really turned the team around. I think they actually might have made the playoffs next year. They did a winning record, like an actual good record for the first time in a long time the next year. But so he went on Twitter today, and I hate Twitter, but it is what it is. He said, "Save this tweet. Justin Fields will be a 49er." So take that for what you will. I trust Joe Thomas the way countless no-name quarterbacks trusted him to guard their blind side. So big ups to Joe. I hope you make the Hall of Fame when it's your time. And thank you for the info, man. Now we know Justin Fields is coming. I got shout out to my boy Dan Witham running the radio show down there in Daytona, Florida. I know he's going to be hyped on that news, to hear about Joe Thomas and to hear about his Ohio State guy, Justin Fields, doing a thing together. So that's step 1. Step 2, and the nonsense we got to get through before we get to the second part of this mock draft, is also based in Cleveland. Cleveland signed Jadeveon Clowney today. So Cleveland adds Jadeveon Clowney, 1-year, $10 million deal. Now, to be very clear, because I hear a lot of people talking about, Clowney's washed up or fell off or whatever it is. Clowney had a 75.4 or 75.9 PFF grade last season on a Tennessee team that he joined with no offseason because of COVID. And, in all honesty, no other pass rushing threat for them to worry about. That's why they spent all the money to bring in Bud Dupree. So Clowney still put together a pretty solid season. Now he's teaming up with another former #1 overall pick who also happens to be an edge rusher in Myles Garrett. I think these dudes are going to go wreak havoc in Cleveland. I honestly believe, just top to bottom on the rosters, I think that right now the Browns are probably the most talented team in the AFC North. You can never count the Steelers out, and the Ravens just seem to keep coming back for however they do it. I don't know, because I don't really believe in most of the talent on the roster. But, just know that's another pillar we might have to get through in the AFC now. I think that this could affect their draft a little bit. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. But overall, top to bottom, their defense is really good. Their running game is really good. Jarvis and Odell haven't really been able to fully put together what we thought they were going to do out there. But, when you have receivers that good, you also got Austin Hooper, David Njoku, I believe, is still there. I could be wrong on that. They could be a dangerous team. No team was, in my opinion, better at running the ball when teams knew they were going to run the ball last year. I think Cleveland actually rated as the #1 offensive line according to PFF. So take that for what you will. They're going to have a nasty team. Talk about that in a second. And the last piece of news, and this is maybe the stupidest decision I've ever heard an individual human being make. And to put that in perspective, I worked in wireless for 13 years and I now work in real estate. So I've heard some very dumb things. Some asshole assaulted Aaron Donald. So he started the fight with Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald, of course, wrecked him. And now he's trying to press charges or sue for money or something like that. Like, I want to be very clear about something to those of you that don't know me well enough or listen to me ramble. Not only is Aaron Donald the best player in the NFL by a lot, and not only has he been for a couple of years, he's on pace to potentially be the greatest player in NFL history. I mean, this guy is a god among insects. There's starters, there's good players, there's Pro Bowlers, there's all pros, there's Hall of Famers, and there's Aaron Donald. I mean, this guy is a one-man wrecking crew. He does things that we've never seen before on a routine basis. He ragdolls 350-pound offensive linemen 2 at a time, 1 with each arm, and doesn't break a sweat doing it. There's a story from his rookie season. Some guy got in his face at like training camp or something, and he literally ripped his face mask off of his helmet. Like, if there's one guy in the world, maybe John Jones might be the only other guy above Aaron Donald that you don't want to mess with, but I mean, dude, what are you thinking about? And hey, I get it. You know, a lot of people might not be as hyped on Aaron Donald as I am, and it's fine. You just don't know football. Don't worry about it. Just study up, son. Aaron Donald's the man. You know, imagine Tua last year. Your first start as a rookie with no offseason coming back from major injury. You got to play against Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. And I think on the very first drive, Aaron Donald's the one that caused the fumble, actually. Somebody looked at it. I think it was the first drive Tua did. Anyway, now that we got that nonsense out of the way, let's wrap up this mock draft because I know you guys want to hear about Dolphin stuff. You don't want to hear about really every other team in the league, but 'tis the season. This is kind of what we do. So we last left off at pick 16 with J.C. Horn. And you can go back and listen to all the reasons I said J.C. Horn will be there. The next pick, I almost said Oakland. The Las Vegas Raiders, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. So Owusu-Koramoah is a guy that before the Dolphins made some of the trades we made, specifically the Bernard McKinney trade, I actually had him mocked to us at this spot. You know, losing Raekwon McMillan last year, we got some play from Nealon Roberts and stuff like that. I wasn't necessarily impressed with a lot of it. I think, you know, with losing Kyle Van Noy, Baker kicks outside a little bit. We go into all these reasons about it, but whatever. I got the Raiders taking him here. So specifically why? So the Raiders have spent a lot of picks on defensive players in the last couple of years. Clellan Ferrell on their D-line. He actually played next to Christian Wilkins at Clemson. One of the outtakes earlier, I said FSU. I don't know why. I knew it was Clemson. You know, last year they had 2 first-round picks. They took Henry Ruggs, but they also took a corner. You know, Max Crosby played very, very well for them. You know, they went out and traded with us last year to get a hold of Raekwon McMillan. Didn't really work out. They're looking to address that linebacker position. I think they like what they've seen in their offense for whatever reason. I mean, Derek Carr's kind of turned it around. Josh Jacobs has been a baller. They spent the high pick on Henry Ruggs last year I just mentioned. Darren Waller's been really good. So they really want to shore up that defense. I think they'd be drooling for Micah Parsons, but unfortunately I don't see a world where they actually get Micah Parsons. So they're going to take the second best linebacker in the draft, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He is a little bit in that mold of Raekwon McMillan. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He's going to play the run. You know, there's a chance, depending on what their roster looks like, that maybe he comes off the field on third downs, but they're looking for that spark. I think they get it there. Next up, and I apologize if I'm looking down a little bit. I want to make sure I'm giving you guys accurate information here. So this is of course our pick at 18, and this one, if I'm being honest, I'm a little torn on. I really like the guy I'm about to mention, and I think he addresses a position of need. But I don't know necessarily if I like what that means for the rest of the team. But anyway, I'm going Kwity Paye. So for those of you who don't know, Kwity Paye is a D-end from Michigan. I personally really like Michigan players. I don't know what it is. Jabril Peppers, Rashawn Gary a couple of years ago. For whatever reason, I think these guys tend to show up well in the NFL when they're drafted. You know, guy we may be looking at, well, I don't think we'll get him now based on this pick with Jalen Mayfield, you know, as an offensive tackle coming out of Michigan. I like the potential that some of these guys have. I just, I don't know. Kwity Paye specifically, here's the thing. The way we play in our 3-4, I want to see Raekwon Davis and Christian Wilkins on the field as much as possible. Last year, a lot of times Wilkins would come off the field in third down in obvious passing situations. Outside of the Nigerian nightmare, Emmanuel Agba, who doesn't necessarily, I hope he has a future in Miami, but it's not on paper yet, right? And Emmanuel Agba was a guy that played very well across from Myles Garrett when he was in Cleveland. The fact that we landed him, he was a beast for us last year. I was very happy. I know some of the Miami sports music guys know him pretty well. I love what you did last year, Emmanuel. If you ever hear this, you probably won't, but whatever. That's it. That's really our only true pass rusher with some kind of speed, move, hybrid thing. Now, Jerome Baker can rush the passer. I want to be very clear about that. He's not necessarily a true DN. Like, he's a stand-up guy. Kwity Paye is a guy that may not be an every-down guy initially. He may be. We might have him stand up a little bit in our 3-4 schemes. We might move him around a little bit. He could definitely be a guy that comes on the field early and often as a rookie in passing situations and gets us a little bit of speed. Now, I know I've said some things before that speed is not necessarily the end-all be-all when it comes to pass rushing, especially if you can collapse the pocket from the inside like we've been able to do and we hopefully are going to continue to do. That being said, Agba is really the only recognizable name at the end on the roster. And I challenge you guys to go to the Dolphins website, look at the roster, and tell me what you know about the other guys. With the exception of Jason Strowbridge, who was a rookie last year, most of you guys probably don't even know him. But, the names are unrecognizable. So, yeah, I hope a lot of these guys stand up and play well. And, I could even see Van Ginkel, seeing some weird looks and stuff like that with his hand in the dirt. But at the end of the day, I think Kwity Paye is probably too much talent to pass up at a position where we really do need, not even necessarily, I would say, an upgrade, but like some depth and some creativity. And I think we've shown, or Flores has shown, I should say, not we, I'm not calling the shots, but I think he's shown the ability to be pretty creative with some of these players that have the ability. Of course, there's a couple offensive linemen that we can still go here, especially if you don't get Sewell. Coming to mind, looking at my list, Elijah Vera Tucker's still on my list. Samuel Cosme's still on my list. Even Creed Humphreys is still on my list, although I don't think we do that. I want to upgrade safety. You guys know that. I just don't see a pick here at 18 that I think is plausible. I think if Miami trades in the first round, there's been a lot of weird rumors about us trying to go up to 4 all of a sudden. That's not going to happen. If Miami trades in the first round, I think this is it. We did this last year when we traded back from 26, and we ended up, I want to say we ended up picking up a 3rd round pick, and then we drafted Noah Igbenogany. Don't quote me on the draft pick that we picked up, but that's where we got Noah Igbenogany, who, by the way, interesting fact. So the Dolphins did some re-signings today on some of their restricted free agents. Weirdly enough, Nick Needham was not one of them. So he remains one of the only guys that still has that tag. One of them we didn't actually sign. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I'd like to have Needham back, especially because he's going to be the 3rd or 4th guy. We need some depth, but, I'd expect to see a lot more of Igbenogany this year, not just on special teams, but, hopefully if not in the slot. Listen, I'm still a big fan of let the guy play safety. Whatever. Not my call. Let's move on. You guys know it. I think I'm calling it right now. Kwity Paye is the pick. I'm happy about Kwity Paye if that's the pick. If we go with one of the O-linemen to play on the right side of the line, or even Creed Humphrey to go in the center, I'm happy there too. Don't think it's going to happen. I think Kwity Paye, I definitely think, should be the guy here. So next up, the Washington football team. Now again, they're a prime candidate, I think, to trade up, especially if one of the quarterbacks is still on the board in the, past 10, like a Mac Jones or something like that. But I think in this situation, since we're not doing trades, I think that the clear pick is Caleb Farley. So Caleb Farley, again, I think I mentioned this earlier, but he's a corner who a lot of people thought maybe the best or the 2nd best corner in the draft. He did have some back surgeries. There's some questionable stuff there. You got Jack Del Rio running a hard-nosed defense that has been playing well. They went defense last year, obviously, with Chase Young. They got some really good players in Montez Sweat. Ryan Kerrigan's getting a little older. But the one spot that I think they really do need to upgrade is corner. And Ronald Darby played for them last year, I want to say, and he's in Denver now on a 1-year deal. So they want to upgrade that position. Farley could be a steal, especially if he returns to form and returns healthy. I think they want a quarterback. But with the big guys going, I don't see anybody else in this draft. I know a lot of the Florida guys like Kyle Trask. I don't personally think he's going to be that good. I definitely don't think he's a first-round pick. I think with Ryan Fitzpatrick on that one-year deal out there slinging it, Terry McLaurin's numbers are going to blow up. Curtis Samuel's going to look good. Their running game, especially with Gibson, is actually pretty solid. So, I mean, we'll see what happens there. They just signed this kid, Sammy Reyes. He is a Chilean football player who I think also played at Florida for a little bit, if I'm correct. But he's a 6'5" tight end. I hope he makes the team. He'd be dynamic to watch in that offense. They want a quarterback. I don't think they're getting one, at least one for the future this year. So I think Caleb Farley is definitely the way to go. And I'm also not sure if you pronounce his name Farley or Fairley. Whatever, but you got it. The Bears, Samuel Cosmi. Samuel Cosmi's an offensive tackle. The Bears are in a really weird spot. They win games. They put together a good defense. They beat up on opponents, but they just can never seem to fix the offense. They kept Allen Robinson on a one-year deal. David Montgomery, who, by the way, had a really good season really quietly last year, continues to turn it up. They brought in Andy Dalton to be the quarterback. I think it's more of a Band-Aid solution to me than anything. But at the end of the day, they need to protect and they need to keep run blocking until they figure out that quarterback situation. So for now, they're going to go with one of the best offensive tackles on the board, Samuel Cosmi. A lot of people have Elijah Vera-Tucker over Samuel Cosmi. In my setup, he's still on the board here. I don't know why. I don't have a good explanation for you. Samuel Cosmi to me seems like a better fit. Elijah Vera-Tucker could definitely be the other guy. So up next, the Indianapolis Colts. For the Colts, we're going Azeez Ojulari. So Azeez Ojulari is another edge rusher. I don't think he is completely as polished as Kwity Paye is. And I know that some of you fans are getting mad at me right now because there's another Miami D end on the board still. Patience, guys. Patience. But the Colts, quite frankly, are a team in a weird spot. They're in a division where they have a couple good teams and some teams that are getting better, but are also stagnant. I think the Jaguars should take a big step forward with some of these picks they're making. The Titans are in kind of a weird spot. They either need to hurry up and win, or their players are going to start to get older. Henry's going to, well, I shouldn't even say Henry's going to, start to go downhill because the dude's been such a beast. But the Colts have the Texans to beat up on, but the Texans only really have another year of this no draft picks, no money situation. And we'll see what happens. Teams with money are dangerous if they bring the right players, as you saw with Miami last year. But in the AFC, they have to contend with Buffalo, Miami, New England. We just mentioned Cleveland, Pittsburgh. In their own division, they got the Titans. Out west, the Broncos could take a step forward. The Raiders are playing well. The Chiefs are, obviously perennial back-to-back Super Bowl appearances. Even the Chargers are really stepping it up. So the Colts are in kind of a weird spot. I think they have a couple holes. I think the one that makes the most sense is edge rusher. They went out and made the trade for DeForest Buckner. Outside of that, Justin Houston's still on the roster. He's really old. They have a couple good linebackers, but the one thing they really need to be able to do that they can't is rush the passer. So they went all in on Carson Wentz. They're going to give up either a second or a first next year, depending on playing time. I think the actual trade was if he plays 75% of the snaps, or if he plays 70% of the snaps and they make the playoffs, that pick moves from a second to a first. So pay attention to Philly. Philly could have 3 first-round picks next year. They already have ours in the trade for us to go from 12 up to 6. They have their own, of course, which should be pretty high because they don't stand to be a great team this year. And then they could potentially have the Colts. So hopefully the pick they got from us is pick 32 as we win the Super Bowl, but we'll see what happens. Titans, speaking of which, I'm going Rashad Bateman. So it's pretty much a consensus that after the big 3 receivers, Rashad Bateman is the next guy. I don't really think anyone's doubting that. Think almost like Justin Jefferson was supposed to be last year, even the Eagles took Jalen Reagor ahead of him. So, it's a simple thing. Their O-line's pretty good. Their defense is okay. It has some holes in it, but outside of A.J. Brown, they really don't have another pass catcher, especially after losing Johnny Smith to the Patriots this offseason. So Derrick Henry's going to continue to shoulder the load. Tannehill's going to continue to do what he does best, be extremely accurate. But you got to have somebody that can catch the ball, right? And if they double cover A.J. Brown and load the box against Derrick Henry, you don't really have much else to go to. Enter Rashad Bateman. So if Rashad Bateman ends up being what people think he could be, they're going to have two really good receivers for a while because they're both young. You know, and Tannehill still has a few years left in the tank for sure. So the Titans want to try to have a solid offense under Mike Vrabel, but they really need to fix that defense. Just the best player available that fits a huge need happens to be Rashad Bateman here. So moving on, the Jets. Now this one could either bite us in the ass or be really good for us. But I have the Jets taking a running back here. And don't freak out, because while most people think Najee Harris is the consensus number one, I actually have the Jets taking another running back, Travis Etienne out of Clemson. Now, the main difference here is Najee Harris is, don't get me wrong, they're both very good running backs, and I think they can both do it all. But Najee Harris is definitely more of a between-the-tackles downhill runner. He has other skills, for sure, but Travis Etienne is more of a well-rounded guy. So he can run powerful, he can run quick, but more importantly, he can catch the ball. You know, he went out and there was some knocks on his hands. He went out and just worked on it all offseason, had a monster year catching the ball. I see the Jets doing something like this, especially with, if you look over the last couple of years, you got running backs coming out like Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, I mean, even Christian McCaffrey. Like, you know, a lot of these running backs coming out are being praised for their hands. You know, look, it's all good, right? Like, I love the Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook style of running back. I also love the guys I just mentioned. Personally, I think what Miami needs right now is the between the tackles Najee Harris type guy. And there's another running back we can talk about in the second round that if both of those guys are going, we have a shot at. But I think specifically with the Jets going quarterback here, they don't really have anything I think is that dangerous in terms of tight end. We talked about some of their receiver moves before. I still don't think their receiver moves are anything dangerous. You know, Denzel Mims could still change my mind. Denzel Mims was a receiver they drafted last year, I believe in the second round out of, I think it was Baylor, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody correct me there. But I think they're going Travis Etienne. They want to give a versatile target. They know that they don't have the most talent. They're going to have to try to do something fancy with their offense. I don't know if it's the right move or not. I think both of these guys are going to have good careers, but typically players that go to the Jets don't end up having good careers. So take that for what you will. So Jets, maybe bonehead move. I don't know. I don't see it as the worst move in the world. I think they could do better, though, taking Najee Harris there. Something about me says the Jets, this is what they're going to do. All right, up next, the first safety off the board, Trayvon Moehrig. I hope his name's Trayvon, man. I've been mixing up Trevor and Trayvon left and right talking about this with people. Simply put, I think he's the best safety in the draft. Oh, by the way, this is the Jaguars pick, in case I didn't say that out loud earlier. So this is a guy I would drool for the Dolphins to get their hands on, because you guys know I've spoke time and time again. I want to upgrade at safety. There's a couple other safeties that I think will be more available later on. But the Jaguars, if you look at what they did, I mean, they drafted C.J. Henderson, I want to say 9th overall last year. It was 9th or 10th overall last year. They went out and they brought in the guy from Seattle, whose name is freaking escaping me right now. Griffin, thank you very much. Those are their two corner positions. You know, I like what they have in linebackers in Miles Jack, Joe Schobert, who's one of the best cover linebackers in football. You know, they spent the high pick on Josh Allen, the defensive Josh Allen a couple of years ago. Caleb on Chasen last year. They're building a good defense, which, I mean, you need a good defense to win, but also if you can play really good defense, especially in that Florida heat, trust me, I sat through the game in Jacksonville last year in September, and then you can, you know, let Trevor Lawrence be who I think Trevor Lawrence can be, especially with that core of young group of receivers who I really like. I really like their young group of receivers. And then they got James Robinson, who was, I mean, undrafted rookie last year, was in contention for Rookie of the Year. So, I mean, look, I said it earlier, I think they could be putting together a very good team. We'll see. So Moehrig, in my opinion, I think he's the best safety in the draft. I think that's the way they go. That's what I would do if I'm a Jaguar. If I'm a Jaguar, if I work for the Jaguar, if I'm in charge, Urban Meyer. All right, now that brings us to Cleveland. I know I said earlier, Jadeveon Clowney signing, I'm going to talk about how it influences my pick, and here's the straight up truth, it doesn't. The guy I have Cleveland taking is Christian Barmore from Alabama. I think Christian Barmore is a monster. A lot of people think he's maybe the best interior D lineman in the draft. I think, quite personally, it's crazy that he lasted this long. I don't even know how he did. I think like this Christian Barmore is a guy that has Bill Belichick written all over him. And especially after the way Belichick was hanging out in Alabama during the pro days, like it could be a very prototypical Patriots move to trade down and grab a guy like Christian Barmore. He's good. I mean, the kid can play. I personally see him as more of a interior 4-3 guy. But think about if you could put him on the field next to Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney. It's a long day for an offensive line. So Christian Barmore, I mean, this is at this point, I don't know how many Alabama guys. I had Mac Jones going. I had the two receivers going. I had Patrick Surtain going. I mean, there's a lot of Alabama talent in this draft. In the last couple of years, Alabama's done a very good job of putting players in the pros. Historically, for probably the last decade before that, I actually argued a lot that they did a bad job doing that. I mean, a lot of the guys that they put in just never really stepped up. But I mean, last year you had Jedrick Wills. Of course, you had Tua Tagovailoa. You had, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy. We could go on. There's a lot of good players that came out last year. But I think Christian Barmore here I think he's the guy. And quite frankly, it's crazy he lasted this long. He's a guy that could very easily, a trade up could happen. Now, we're coming up on a half an hour here in a couple of minutes, so I'm going to try to burn through the rest of these so I don't waste everyone's time. But let's keep it going. So the Ravens, Kadarius Toney. This is another Florida guy. There's a lot of Florida names in this draft. Kadarius Toney is a receiver who I'll just be quite honest, I don't like. I don't think he's going to be much at the NFL level. I think I honestly don't think he should be the pick here. I think another receiver like maybe an Elijah Moore, Terrace Marshall Jr., one of these guys should be the pick here. But for whatever reason, I don't like him. I just don't. He's a smaller guy. He's a speed guy. Whatever. The Ravens need a receiver. They're going to go receiver. A lot of people are listing Toney as the next guy. I'm sure one of you Gator fans can call me after this and tell me exactly why I'm wrong, but I don't know. I don't see it, but I definitely see the Ravens going with a receiver in this spot. Take that for what you will. Up next is a guy I really like, and it's so strange because this guy I've seen everywhere from the middle of the first round to late in the second round. I don't get the knocks on him, but his name's Zaven Collins. So this pick is the New Orleans Saints, by the way. So the Saints have really, 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 I know a lot of people don't notice this because, they think Drew Brees and they think they're great offense, but they've done a really good job quietly putting together good drafts over the last couple of years. They've had a lot of guys that, step up, and I'm not just talking about like Michael Thomas now and Kamara. I'm talking about offensive linemen, interior D linemen, rotational players. They've just done so well. Last year they took Cesar Ruiz in the first round, who was a guy I actually wanted us to remember. Originally, we were picking 18 and 26. My mock was Austin Jackson at 26, Cesar Ruiz at 18. We ended up taking Austin Jackson at 18. The Saints then took Cesar Ruiz. We still need a long-term solution at center. But Zaven Collins is a guy that can play the end. He can stand up and play outside linebacker. He's got a really good mix of strength and speed. He's got instincts. I think he can play the run very well. I like Zaven Collins. He's definitely a guy I'm going to be watching his career for sure. And I think the Saints are once again getting a hell of a pick here. So moving on, 4 picks left. I'm sorry. So the Green Bay Packers, I struggled with this one. Initially I had them going receiver. Like everyone thought they were going to last year. And I know there was the whole controversy with Aaron Rodgers and all that. But they brought back Aaron Jones. The kid Lazard out there, I think is a very good player. Long story short, I don't have them taking an offensive weapon. So Aaron Rodgers is going to be pissed again. Maybe he's going to retire to go host Jeopardy. But I have the Green Bay Packers taking Greg Newsome the second. There's a lot of juniors in this draft, or the seconds or whatever you want to call them. In fact, a lot of them, just in case no one else knew this, are sons of players like Asante Samuel Jr. is a second-round target. J.C. Horn was actually Joe Horn's son, the longtime receiver, played for the Falcons and Saints. But anyway, of course, Patrick Surtain. But so I got Greg Newsome here. In my opinion, he's probably the next best corner. I know there's a little bit of argument here about specifically who the next guy is on the board. I think that you know, once you get across from Alexander, there's not really much there. And then he's a guy that could potentially be a cap casualty in a year or two because corners make so much money now. And you got to pay Devontae Adams. You're still paying Aaron Rodgers. You just paid Aaron Jones. So I don't think he should be a cap casualty, but it could happen. So I think, especially with guys like Justin Jefferson, you know, Allen Robinson staying in the division, you know, Detroit, I have them taking Jalen Waddle early. I'm sure they'll be looking to address receiver again at some point in the near future. I think that they need to continue to load up that defense. So Green Bay, Greg Newsome. Burning through the next couple, the Bills, Jalen Phillips. Most of you Miami fans are also you fans. You guys know Jalen Phillips was a guy that, right, you know, he stepped in when Greg Rousseau sat out this year, and he balled as an edge rusher. A lot of people had him in the pre-draft process going as early as the top 10. I think this is definitely the spot for him. I know, you know, we may not want to face him a couple times a year, but the sad truth of it is he's not as polished. I don't think he's a guy that's going to step on the field day one and be a great pass rusher in the NFL. I think he can be. I think it's going to take some time. But remember, Buffalo also drafted A.J. Epinesa out of Iowa last year, who a lot of people thought was one of the top edge rushers, and they got him later too. So the Bills could either have a couple busts on their hands or they could have a couple really dangerous pass rushers on their hands. We'll see what happens. I hope for the sake of Tua, we get that other offensive tackle I keep asking for. Wrapping up here, I got the Chiefs, Elijah Vera Tucker. This is a pretty big slide for him. You know, a lot of people had him going as high as 13 to the Chargers before, you know, Christian Darrisaw really shot up the boards. I mean, it's simple. The Chiefs invested $500 million in Patrick Mahomes and then lost all their offensive linemen. I know they got Kyle Long out of retirement. There's a reason players retire. We'll see what happens. You know, they need to fix their O-line. You saw it in the Super Bowl. They got dominated by the Bucs D-line. I mean, it's the reason the Super Bowl was won. And these fools that keep talking about Tom Brady's so great. Like, I ain't trying to hear it. Like, you saw what they did to that offense. And it's always the defense that wins the Super Bowl. You know, the one occasion I can think of that it's not was probably when the Chiefs beat the Niners a year before. And who knows if that pass from your boy Jimmy Garoppolo to Emmanuel Sanders, the streak into the end zone, was just a half a yard shorter. We could be talking about a whole different game because that was really the turning point. And then let's wrap it up. So wrapping it up at 32, I got the Buccaneers taking Jason away out of Penn State. The guy's another guy, pure, pretty much edge rusher. You know, a lot of people think he can play the run better than I do. You know, there are edges out there. I mean, you got Jason Pierre-Paul, who's old. Shaq Barrett, you know, he really is more of a stand-up guy anyway. But with Pierre-Paul's age and all, you don't really know how much longer you can get out of him. The interior of their D-line with, you know, Ndamukong Suh and Vita Vea, who's often injury prone, could maybe say, okay, well, maybe they take Levi Onwuzurike, or maybe even look at a Davion Nixon in the second round. But I think Jason Away is just too good from the pass up right here. You know, they're going to need the pass rush, especially with, I mean, we all thought it was kind of crazy how they found a way to pay everybody this year. They're not going to be able to keep that team together much longer. So that's it. We wrapped up the mock draft. Thank you all for watching. We're going to be back with something new next week. As always, please check the links below. Check out the WWSD gear. Follow us on Instagram. Check out the Miami Sports Music page. Buy some Miami Sports Music gear. Fins up, guys. Getting ready. We're closer. We're almost there. Draft day.